But in a situation where you find that a person look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying with us. This is Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in our headquarters. Now, we'll take a look at other stories on the papers, talking about the Daily Trust newspaper, which is the first we're looking at. Now, the lead story there is an investigation by Daily Trust newspaper, bandits closing in on Kaduna metropolis. It has the riders that says, as kidnappers vacate forests due to military operations, Riga Chikun, Riga Sabu, others witnessing attacks. We are not sleeping, Kaduna government and the police. Zaria residents agitated, and you also have Kajuru locals desert homes. Now, you would see the infograph showing you how bandits in Kaduna State are inching towards the metropolis. Now, quite scary, really. If you take a look at that, you'd see recent reports shows that 1,192 killing due to banditry and other security challenges. You have 3,348 abducted, and there you would see the other, what do you call the infograph, giving you an illustration of what is happening there. And then at the top there, you would see Bauchi's oldest monarch, Emir of Jama'ari, buried amid tears. You see also as China delays FG shops for 5.9 trillion naira loan to deliver multiple rail projects. Lassa fever killed 40 Nigerians in January. That's according to the NCDC. Well, these are some of the major stories on Daily Trust this morning.
Okay, let's look at some more stories on the Blueprint newspaper this morning. The lead story there states APC National Convention plots to jettison zoning thickens. The riders there, governors, others intensify lobby. Buhari still holds the ace, CCEPC. And you'd also see throw NWC positions open. Party chieftain tells leaders. And other stories right at the top, you'd see ASU threatens shutdown, Buhari religious leaders beg. And on page 7, a market capitalization of FBN, GT Bank, UBA, two others hit 2.65 trillion naira. You'd also see the story about oil hits 7-year high as rally extends to 7th week. And on page 31 on the Blueprint newspaper, AFCON, Senegal breaks jinx, beats Egypt to lift trophy. And just below the pictorial there, where you see President Muhammadu Buhari and Guinea-Bissau Minister of Foreign Affairs Suzy Barbosa during their meeting on the situation in Guinea-Bissau. Diri's second anniversary, Oshibajo, Jonathan, Ayu, others flag off projects. And on page 7, tough times await Naira as external reserves now below $40 billion. Wife 30 arrested for stabbing husband's nephew to death in Ogun. That's quite tragic. You'll see the details of that story on page 13 on the Blueprint newspaper. And on page 15, Nigeria needs younger generation as leaders. This is according to Abdul Salami. And on page 5, Lai slams 100 billion naira libel suit against online media. These are some of the major stories on the Blueprint.
All right. Now, on the Punch newspaper this morning, the lead story says NIMC portal breaks down. Banks, telcos, passport issuance suffer. You'd also see downtime enters 6th day. MTN, Glo, Airtel, others suspend SIM replacement and acquisition. Immigration may rebook passport applicants' appointments as glitch stalls NIN verification. Telcos lose millions, customers' verification affected. NIMC apologizes as engineers battle crisis. Now, the other stories there, at the very top, you see investors commit 3.36 trillion naira to FG bonds in 12 months. Oversubscription hits 1.6 trillion naira. You'd find details of that on page 32. External reserves slide to 4 months low at $39.98 billion. And you see also FG school feeding suffers setback. Pupils wait in vain for vendors. Other riders says, I was paid for only 3 months in 2021, says contractor. FG making payments for school feeding. Ministry insists. All right. Well, we'll see other stories there. At the bottom there, below the pictorial, you'll see Oyetola's supporters lampoon Aregbesol's ex-commissioner for attacking governor. Housewife 30 stabs 18-year-old husband's nephew to death over broken mirror in Ogun. You know, sometimes when I hear some of these stories, I kind of doubt, is this true? You know, because it sounds very outrageous and, you know, too simplistic. I mean, how can someone kill another person because of broken mirror? Maybe there are other issues tied to that. For details of that, you can pick a copy of The Punch, go to page 4 and 5. You would have a sense of what exactly is going on. Now, dismissed DPO fleeing in Kingpin arrested. Okay, dismissed DPO fleeing Kingpin arrested. NDLEA seizes 22,160 kilogram codeine in Lagos port. You'd also find the other stories there. Can Nigeria be saved from disintegrating? Well, that's an issue that you must look at, you know, to get an idea of what exactly is going on. So these are the major stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning.
Okay. Let's take a look at other stories on the Nation newspaper. There you'd find ASU begins mobilization for another strike in varsities. Final decision is slated for February 14th. You'd find other stories right at the top on page 8. Oni's defection to APGA unsettles PDP, Fayose seeks unity. And on page 7, General Minima's passport seized over probe into 3.8 billion naira fraud. Main leads Senegal to AFCON glory. Atiku abandoned Benue in trying times, says Otom. You'd also find other stories right on the Nation newspaper. MTN's new shareholders get 5.7 billion naira dividends. Return on investment is 24%. No territory under terror group, federal government insists. Oh, okay. Just below that, you'll see, I would never betray your trust if re-elected, Governor Oyetola promises. These are some of the major stories on the Nation, rather.
All right, the Guardian newspaper this morning leads with the story, Nigeria's domain name fails to gain traction, attracts 184,341 users. The Riders says businesses worry about inconsistent government policies. You also see INEC banks, e-commerce firms, MDAs still adopt the .com.net.org. Our country loses millions of dollars to foreign adoption. You'd see also the pictorial there showing you the new African champions celebrating their victory at the Africa Cup of Nations competition. Senegal, that is, lifting the trophy after winning the final. Now, you'd see also below that, Ohaneze Ndibo, IPN back power shift to Southeast in 2023. 500 Northerners killed in 4 weeks, CNG claims. 7 crew missing, 3 alive, 1 body found after Sepco fire. Now, how to build Africa's healthcare defense system by Adesina is also on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Well, that will be all for the newspapers that we are looking at this morning, and well, very interesting stories. We'll take a short breather, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at these stories, you know, and try to see if we can get perspectives on them. Please stay with us.
All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television. Now let's take a look at the stories that made headway on some of our papers this morning, like this one on the Daily Trust newspaper that states bandits closing in on Kaduna metropolis. You know, in the past weeks, I would say months, there have been quite a number of attacks, you know, headed towards Kaduna State, and residents, you know, have been really terrified, and there's a lot of complaint, you know, coming from that area. But our security architecture are saying they're doing all they can, you know, to man these places, but we cannot keep numb to it.
True. I mean, and information like this on the front page of Daily Trust should, you know, give them some concern, should put them on the alert, you know, that this is where this is heading, especially if you look at, you know, recent attacks. I mean, need not to say the attack on NDA, for instance, you know, for me, last year, the attack, you know, invasion of the Nigerian Defense Academy was enough, you know, to say that this is actually at the doorstep of the, you know, capital in Kaduna. I mean, if you look at recent attacks, you know, in Rigachukun, in Rigasa. I mean, Rigasa is where, I mean, this is where the train station usually stops, right? And so, I mean, if it's that close, then what exactly are you waiting for? You know, if you look at, you know, Sabo and some of these areas,
is quite close
they've all witnessed attacks. Yes, they've all witnessed attacks. So also you have communities such as Marabang Ribo, you have Narai layout. These are communities around the capital city. You have Bagi Villa and also the Barakallahu, Rigasa, and the rest of them. These are places that we've seen recent attacks there. And so if these criminals, terrorists could come as close as that, then it means that the attackers, you know, are near the city center. So it's time to do something really seriously about it. We understand that there are military operations ongoing, and because of that, they are leaving the forest. So you could see that is a strategy that was used by Boko Haram, you know, in the northeast, where they now decided to come into the communities so that they can use people as human shield, sort of. So when military is taking, you know, is carrying out operations, it becomes very difficult to go to some of these communities and unleash fire, really, because you'll be mindful of, yes, you know, you'll be mindful of the casualties that you could have, you know, as a result of that. So it's very important that we now resort to intelligence, like serious intelligence, because once they get into the communities and mix up with the people, it becomes very difficult. Unlike when they're in the forest. In the forest, you could even deploy, you know, fighter jets to, you know, fire, and you will not be scared of, you know, collateral damages.
Saying our fighter jets have not really done us any good so far, have it?
Well, I guess that was the whole idea of proscribing the bandits as terrorists, you know, to enable the government or the military or the armed forces to unleash, you know, the kind of fire that is required to take them out, really, you know, of the system. Because while we were acquiring those fighter jets, there are conditions for deploying, you know, those fighter jets. So deploying them in communities where you have civilians is not acceptable, and so it becomes very difficult. But once they were proscribed, and then if they were in the bushes, then it's easy to tackle them. But in this instance, where they are now coming into communities, it becomes very difficult. It now means that vigilantes in those communities, and, you know, the sort of, you know, community policing that we have, you know, in those places need to be, you know, up and doing. They need to be vigilant. So it's no longer just the business of security officials anymore, but also
collective responsibility.
Yes, yeah, you know, as people living in those communities, we must provide information to our security agencies so that they can do the needful. It's very, very important. If you see or notice any suspicious movement, then it's your responsibility to bring that to bear, to our police. And it also means that there must be patrols now, more effective ones, more effective patrols, of the communities. It's exciting what the governor of Borno State is doing. Recent procurements that we have seen of, trucks for security officials and including the CJTF in the state to patrol. And so one of the roads has also been reopened, so that's commendable. We hope to see that replicated in some other states, especially in the northwestern part of the country where we've seen this rise of activities of bandits or terrorists, whichever way you want to refer to them. So it's very important that this is really taken headlong. Another story that got my attention there is the tragic story of the loss of the Emir of Jama'are, who is now late. It's said to have been the monarch there for about 50 years. That's a long time. About 5 decades being the monarch there. Is one of the oldest in the state. Unfortunately, he has died. But again, it's important that we document history. During his reign, I believe there are a lot of things that were done in that part of the state, and it's very important that our historians and our traditional institution preserve some of those legacies, preserve some of those things that happened under his his time, so that we can always look back and say one time there was this emir that was the emir for 50 years.
And I'm really very interested about the fact that just as it states here, buried amid tears, which means he must have been a very benevolent and generous monarch. And this comes to tell us that it's very, very important to leave a very positive impression, on the people that you lead. You will always be remembered for that, and people will always reflect, on your good deeds. So may his soul rest in peace, and others who have died as well. Amen.
All right. Now, other stories, of interest. If you take a look at the Blueprint newspaper this morning, you see the story that leads saying that APC, talking about the APC National Convention, that there's plot to jettison zoning, and that's thickening. You have governors and others intensify lobby. Buhari will still holds the A's. And that's according to CCEPC. Throw NWC positions open, party chieftain tells leaders. Well, we hope to see. This is contrary to initial speculations that we're hearing that, the chairmanship of the APC has been zoned to the North Central. So we wait to see how that will be, really, whether or not that will, happen. Or not, but everything is tilted towards 2023. The whole calculation is to see how will all the regions position themselves, ahead of the 2023 elections. There are a lot of fears and concerns about the APC convention come February 26th.
We're looking forward to it.
We're looking forward to it. I hope that there will be no implosion, as some are really concerned about.
There's this other story on the Punch newspaper, the one about NIMSI portal breaks down, banks, telcos, passport issuance suffer. I had a very, very bad experience, with the whole NIMSI, thing. I had a problem with my date of birth, and I went to the office to do like a change, of the date of birth. And then there were so many guidelines, to do that. But when I saw that there were agents, in that office who would actually tell you, if you want to go through the right channel, this is what you're supposed to do. But if you'd like to go through the back channel, there are better ways of doing that. And you pay money and all of that. And then, when I went to the passport office, it told me NIMSI portal has crashed. There were so many stories and all that. And then somebody outside the NIMSI office, there are private agents actually working outside the office who have access, you know, to the NIMC portal directly. I was very, very surprised and shocked, you know, to see how these guys were working. And a lot of people outside were saying, these are the guys that actually do the work. Nothing is being done inside there, because if you apply for a change of name or date of birth, it takes months. Some of them just toss these things aside, and it's really sad.
Yeah, so you could see that there's a deliberate attempt to frustrate the process for, you know, law-abiding citizens of the country.
Really
you know,
sad.
clearly you are seeing, because that's what it means. Otherwise, what's the point of having officials in the office who wouldn't do anything, but rather, you know, let, you know, not people who are outside to take on that responsibility. You know, I mean, if you look at, you know, the printing of the passport itself, our own very passport, is not even done, you know, in Nigeria. So it's from the top down. There are different layers of this racketeering, because that's what it means. You know, when you have
It's really bad.
people, you know, making a living out of, you know, extorting people, because that's what it means. I mean, what's wrong with the proper channel? If I want to go through the proper channel, what's wrong with that? I mean, isn't someone paid salary to ensure that the proper channel works? But that's what we get, you know, in the country. You know, deliberate effort is, you know, is made to make sure that if you want to go through the right channel, you are frustrated, and at the end of the day, you do not have a choice than to patronize, you know, some of these other people who are just, you know, by the side.
You know, I had to patronize that because it's going to take me so long, because they told me that I was like, when will the change be effected? They told me they don't know, maybe when the connectivity is back, and only God knows when that connectivity
And it's part
will
of
be
the
back.
corruption that we've always been talking about, really. I mean, if we talk about corruption, it's not really like you expect to see, you know, billions being stolen or not. I mean, but
These are the little
even,
things.
yeah, even in offices, when you go to government agencies and government offices, how do the officials conduct themselves? You know, that's very important, because they cannot tell me that they are not aware that there are people like this that are operating, you know, at that level.
Oh, no,
it's
no,
not
that's
possible.
not the case. They have contact. I've seen it. I have a number.
They are probably working together.
Yes, they call them and say, quickly check this. And it's really sad that they have access, you know, to the portal. I was very surprised.
It just shows you the failure in the system, and it's really appalling, really. Other stories talking about, you know, the system in the country. The Nation newspaper leads with the story that says ASU begins mobilization for another strike in varsities. From what we heard yesterday, they are declaring today a lecture-free day.
Yes, I saw that.
That's also another form of
I just
industrial action, I may say.
I just hope it doesn't become, you know, the whole month lecture-free day.
I hope so too. I mean, but from what we are seeing, that we're about to, you know, they are going to take a final decision about strike action, to whether to go or not to go on the February 14th. So it means that, you know, for students, maybe you should begin to make some plans. There's likely to be another industrial action in the coming weeks. You know.
Although I saw in the news, President Muhammadu Buhari was pleading for them not to actually go on that strike. But I just really hope they come to a more, you know, conclusive term, come to the negotiation. They've been coming to a negotiating table. That's the problem. But
exactly.
still,
So at the end of the day, where does the negotiation leaves us? I mean, at the end of the day, you see that the negotiations do not really yield, you know, much results, because when things are agreed upon, we do not see implementation. And I believe that's part of the reasons why, you know, ASU are also agitated, that they do not see the implementation of what has been agreed upon. So it's a major issue. But again, other experts and analysts have said that government does not have the capacity to do what ASU is demanding. Well, that's arguable. You could argue it from whatever standpoint, but I mean, this is the demand that the ASU is making, and so they feel that the government can do it. Others have said government universities should have some form of autonomy so that they can be able to source funds, you know, on their own, and that's a practice done globally. But what's stopping ours from doing that? Well, I guess that's a discussion for another day. Well, these are basically some of the stories of interest on our newspapers today. We'll take a short breather, and then when we come back, we'll now take a look at other discussions.
But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
because I have said that